The Israeli foreign minister is dead. Who's responsible? And what comes next? It was 9:42 a.m. in Jerusalem when the sky turned from blue to a shade of dread. A single missile, sleek and silent, the Iron Dome, Israel's pride in defense, failed to intercept. It was not just a breach of airspace. It was a breach of confidence, of sovereignty, of peace. The missile's trajectory was precise, unforgiving. Its destination, the Knesset. The explosion shattered more than windows. It shattered the rhythm of a city that had learned to live with tension but not with tragedy. Smoke rose like a warning to the world. Sirens wailed, not in drills, but in desperation. Seconds. Among the fallen was Eliav Ben-Tzur, Israel's foreign minister. A man whose voice had shaped policy, whose hands had signed treaties, whose presence had steadied nerves in the face of rising threats. He had warned of escalation. He had pleaded for caution. And now, he lay beneath the rubble of the very institution he had fought to protect. Footage from a nearby security camera captured the moment. Flash, a roar, then silence. The eastern wing of the Knesset, where Ben-Tzur's office stood, was obliterated. Rescue teams arrived within minutes, but the damage was irreversible. His body was found beneath the collapsed ceiling, clutching a folder marked "Urgent." Outside, citizens gathered in disbelief. Some cried, some prayed, others simply stared, unable to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. The air was thick with dust and dread. News anchors struggled to find words. Analysts speculated. But the truth was simple. Israel had been struck. At its heart, and somewhere far beyond the borders, those who launched the missile watched. They saw the smoke, they heard the silence, and they knew they had sent a message, not just to Israel but to the world. This was not just an attack. It was a declaration, a shift, a spark. And as the dust settled over Jerusalem, the question wasn't who would respond. It was how far they'd go. The world didn't wait. Within minutes of the blast, statements poured in like aftershocks. The United States called it an outrageous act of aggression, with President Trump summoning NATO allies to an emergency summit. His voice, firm and unyielding, echoed across newsrooms. This is not just an attack on Israel. It's an attack on stability, on democracy, on every nation that values peace. Russia, ever the chess player, urged restraint. Their foreign minister appeared calm, calculated, warning against escalation without evidence. China, cloaked in silence, offered no comment. Only a cryptic press release about regional sovereignty. The silence spoke volumes. But in Tehran, the mood was electric. Iranian lawmakers erupted in chants, fists raised, voices unified in fury and triumph. Death to Israel! Death to America! They roared, framing the missile strike as righteous vengeance. The assassination of Hezbollah's leader, allegedly orchestrated by Israeli intelligence, had not gone unanswered. This was retaliation, they claimed. This was justice. The UN Security Council convened in haste, diplomats scrambling for consensus. But unity proved elusive. Western powers demanded condemnation. Eastern blocs called for investigation. No resolution passed. No ceasefire proposed. Just silence, tension, and the ticking of a geopolitical clock. Markets trembled. Oil prices surged. Embassies fortified. The world watched, divided not just by borders, but by ideology, by allegiance, by fear. And in the streets, from New York to Berlin to Beirut, protesters gathered. Some waved flags, others burned them. Everyone had chosen a side. The Middle East stood on a knife's edge. And as the dust settled over Jerusalem, the question wasn't whether war would come. It was how soon. Eliav Ben-Tzur was not born into power, he earned it. The son of Iraqi immigrants, raised in the working-class neighborhoods of Haifa, he carried the weight of exile in his bones and the fire of ambition in his voice. Fluent in Farsi, Arabic, and Hebrew, He was a bridge between worlds that refused to meet. Before the world knew his name, Tehran did. He had walked its streets, negotiated in its shadows, and listened to its whispers as a covert diplomat under deep cover. He understood Iran not as an enemy, but as a puzzle, dangerous, yes, but solvable. Ben-Tzur rose through Israel's political ranks not by charm, but by clarity. He was a hawk, unapologetically so. He believed in strength, in strategy, in silence when necessary and thunder when required. His containment doctrine wasn't just military, it was psychological. He knew Iran's fears, its fractures, its pride, and he used that knowledge to shape Israel's foreign policy with surgical precision. Iran, bloodied but defiant, fired back. Missiles rained down on Haifa and Tel Aviv, striking residential blocks, schools, and hospitals. The Iron Dome intercepted many, but not all. The ones that broke through left devastation in their wake. Sirens screamed. Families fled. Emergency rooms overflowed. The death toll climbed by the hour. The Israeli Defense Forces declared full mobilization. Reservists, teachers, engineers, students donned uniforms and reported for duty. The nation shifted from grief to grit. Border tensions flared. In the north, Hezbollah mobilized. In the south, Hamas issued threats. Rockets launched from Gaza lit up the night sky. Lebanon's southern villages braced for impact. The region was no longer teetering, it had tipped. Diplomats packed their bags. Embassies shuttered. Airspace closed. The Middle East was in open war. And yet, beneath the roar of jets and the silence of power outages, something deeper stirred. A reckoning, a realization that this was not just retaliation, it was escalation. And the line between defense and destruction had blurred beyond recognition. The missiles may have lit up the skies, but the real war unfolded in silence. In alleyways, in encrypted messages, in the flicker of a camera lens. Mossad agents moved like ghosts through Beirut's crowded streets, slipping past checkpoints, planting devices, vanishing before dawn. In Tehran, whispers turned into screams as high-ranking officials disappeared without explanation. The headlines didn't say war. They said accident, fire, missing. But everyone knew. Iran responded in kind. Israeli diplomats abroad became targets. In Nairobi, a car exploded outside a consulate. In Buenos Aires, a briefcase left in a cafe triggered panic. The operatives were invisible, their motives unmistakable. Assassinations weren't just tactical, they were symbolic. Each name struck from the record was a message. No one is untouchable. In Tel Aviv, the mood shifted from mourning to mobilization. The death of Ben-Tzur had galvanized the public. Volunteers lined up to donate blood. Reservists packed their gear. The nation was no longer asking why, it was asking when. In Tehran, the narrative was triumphant. State media hailed the missile strike as a victory. Crowds chanted in the streets. But behind the celebration, whispers of fear grew louder. The retaliation had begun, and it was far from over. The diplomatic collapse wasn't just a failure of policy, it was a failure of imagination. The belief that peace could be brokered, dialogue could triumph over destruction, had been buried beneath rubble and rhetoric. And as the dust settled over Jerusalem, as the embers glowed in Haifa, as the world held its breath, one question loomed larger than all others. Was this the beginning of World War III? The answer wasn't in the speeches. It wasn't in the headlines. It was in the silence between sirens. In the eyes of children watching tanks roll past their windows. In the hands of leaders gripping pens they no longer used. The collapse had begun. And what came next would not be decided in conference rooms. It would be decided in fire. Let's break it down. The missile's precision, its timing, and its target suggest more than chaos, they suggest intent. Was this a sanctioned act of war? A calculated strike meant to destabilize Israel's leadership? Or was it the work of a rogue faction within Iran, operating beyond the reach of official command? Intelligence agencies remain divided. Some point to encrypted communications intercepted days before the attack. Others argue the absence of a formal claim signals internal fragmentation. And what of Ben-Tzur? His death wasn't just a loss, it was a strategic blow. He was the architect of Israel's containment doctrine, the diplomat who understood Iran's psyche better than most. Was he targeted for that very reason? Or was his presence in the Eastern Wing a tragic coincidence? A cruel twist in an already volatile narrative? The implications ripple far beyond borders. Analysts warn this could mark the dawn of a new Cold War. One fought not with tanks, but with proxies, cyber-sabotage, and economic strangulation. Others whisper of nuclear escalation, of red lines blurred and deterrence ignored. The stakes have never been higher, and as alliances shift and rhetoric hardens, one truth remains. The future of the Middle East is no longer uncertain. It's unstable,